All right, diving in. Dead Room Farce, book number 17 in the Charles Paris series. For anyone new to this, Charles is, well, he's an actor, sort of. More like he's almost famous, or, more famous for just barely missing the mark. And wouldn't you know it, he keeps ending up in these murder mysteries.
Yeah, it's a theme.
Definitely a theme. So we've got a great mix of sources this time. Goodreads summary, reviews, a bit about Simon Brett himself. It's like we're stepping back into, the early 90s?
Yeah.
The era of cassette tapes and, touring farces.
That's right in the thick of it. And the Goodreads summary, it sets it all up, perfectly. Charles lands a role, and get this, the play's called Not on Your Wife. I mean, come on, you can already tell this is going to be hilarious.
It's almost too perfect, right? Like, Charles, his whole life is kind of a farce, and then he's literally in a farce called Not on Your Wife. And then on top of that, you've got the title of the book itself, Dead Room Farce. It's like a double meaning, right? The play's genre and the murder mystery we're about to get into.
It's classic Simon Brett. That's his thing. And the reviews, they really hit on, how well he gets these actors, these almost famous types. Charles is painted as, well, he's got a bit of a drinking problem, and the ladies, well, they're definitely a distraction, his career. More like resting than rising star,
But the thing is, right, that's exactly what makes him such a great, amateur sleuth. I mean, we all love an underdog.
Yeah.
Especially when they're solving crimes.
Totally. He's, relatable. He's got flaws. So when he does solve it, it feels, I don't know, like he earned it. Because he struggles in all these other parts of life. Almost like he's finding redemption through these cases, especially with, the whole thing with Frances, his wife or ex-wife.
Right. They're always trying to get back together. Speaking of the case, though, this time it's Mark Lear. An old drinking buddy of Charles used to be a sound engineer for the BBC. And he's found, dead. In his recording studio, which just so happens to be where Charles is recording an audiobook.
Oh, and not just any audiobook. It's described as, super formulaic. One of those romance novels, totally predictable. The reviews really point out how ironic it is. Charles, caught up in this crazy murder, and he's spending his days reading this super sweet, totally fake love story.
It's layers, right?
Yeah.
And it gets even better. Not just any studio. We're talking early 90s. Cassette tapes are still the thing. It's like a total blast from the past.
Totally sets the scene. Some reviewers even compared it to, have you ever read Dance to the Music of Time? Powell's, that massive series about artists, intellectuals over decades. It's like that, but for British showbiz.
Minus the murders, of course.
Yeah, minus the murders, but still.
But can you imagine Charles trying to solve this murder, probably dealing with tangled cassette tapes, and all while navigating the world of actors and directors and producers.
It's like you were saying, layers, ambition, rivalry, secrets, and all within this tiny little world of entertainment. Simon Brett actually has a background in theater and TV. He knows this stuff.
So he's not just making it up. Nope, he's been there.
And he's not afraid to make fun of it a little either. The reviewers say he's got that satirical style down pat. Exposing all the, the pomposity, the hypocrisy, but in a way that's still funny.
It's a tricky balance, but he nails it. One review even compared him to, P.G. Wodehouse and Richmal Crompton. Talk about British humor. The point is, he keeps things fresh. Even 17 books in, that's got to be hard.
So we've got the play, the murder, cassette tapes, all that satire. But where does the real intrigue start?
Well, there's this mention of a possible expose about Mark Lear, the victim. Something about his time at the BBC, he had secrets and someone really wanted them to stay buried.
Oh, no, that's interesting. What kind of secrets could a sound engineer even have?
Mm-hmm.
And who would go that far to keep them quiet? I'm hooked already.
Me too. The reviewers, they hint that there's more to this than we think, not just the murder itself. It's why is Charles so into these mysteries? Is he just a puzzle solver, or is there something deeper going on? Now, that is the question, and one we're going to have to figure out as we keep digging into Dead Room Farce.
I can't wait. It really makes you think, Charles and his personal stuff, and then this murder he's got to solve. It's like he's trying to, I don't know, make up for all the things he messes up by, catching a killer.
Yeah, I get that. And then on top of it all, it's not just a normal crime scene, right? This is a touring production. So it's not just your typical suspects, the jealous actor, the angry lover. They're all moving around. Makes it even trickier.
A locked room mystery, but on wheels, which, knowing Charles, probably means even more crazy situations. The reviewers, they definitely don't let us forget about his flaws, even with a murder going on.
Oh, for sure. One even pointed out how Charles, he takes his role in the bedroom farce, a little too seriously. He ends up, with two women from the play. Typical Charles.
Well, it wouldn't be a Charles Paris mystery without a little bit of, romance thrown in. But it also says something about him, I think. Like, he's vulnerable, he's looking for comfort,
Mhm.
easy connections, maybe to get away from all the pressure of his own life.
It's like he's constantly searching, right? Whether it's success on stage or getting back with Francis or solving this murder.
Yeah, and sometimes in all that searching, he ends up making things worse. The reviewers, they kind of hint that the other actors, they notice his antics, and some of them, well, they've got their own secrets too.
So we've got this whole cast of characters, right? All with their own motives.
Yeah.
A murder that happens in this crazy, moving world of a touring play. And Charles, right smack in the middle, trying to figure it all out while dealing with his own issues. It's like peak Simon Brett.
Totally.
Yeah.
One reviewer even said Dead Room Farce could be like a dance to the music of time, but for showbiz. Of course, without the murders.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
But thinking about that comparison, it really makes you realize how much is in Brett's writing. It's not just about who did it. It's this whole world he builds. With these characters, all the little details, it's like, what does it mean to be human?
He's really good at satire, like we talked about. But there's also like this warmth to it. He's not just making fun, he's showing us these characters, all their flaws and stuff, and it's like we see ourselves in them.
And that title, Dead Room Farce.
Yeah.
It works on like so many levels.
Right. The play, the actual dead body, even like a dead room is a real thing in audio recording. It's brilliant.
Layers, right. Just like the mystery itself. And speaking of layers, one reviewer mentioned this thing really caught my eye. Right before the murder, Mark Lear, he records this ad for Not On Your Wife. And in it, he talks about writing an expose about his time at the BBC.
Whoa, that's a big deal. So like his past is the key to the whole thing. There's more going on here than we thought.
Exactly. It's like all of a sudden we're in a spy thriller or something hidden inside this comedy. Who knew a sound engineer had such a, scandalous past? What was he hiding?
And who knew about it, right? And wanted to keep it quiet? It feels like everyone around Charles has something to hide. Makes you wonder, was it really a coincidence, him being in this play? Or is there something more connecting it all?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Especially with, how often he stumbles into these things. Do you think he's like drawn to them? Or do they just, I don't know, find him?
It's like which came first, right? The chicken or the egg? Part of him, he's curious, he likes the puzzle. But then it's like, maybe he's almost like looking for these situations without realizing it. Like he needs to prove something to find some meaning in all the mess of his life.
So like solving these murders, it's his way of making up for messing up in other ways. Righting the wrongs, one case at a time.
I like that, yeah. Fits with him trying to get back with Francis too, right? Like he's trying to be better in all these different parts of his life.
The reviewers, I think they picked up on that. They talked about how Brett writes these characters that are, messed up, but you still like them. You can't help but root for Charles, even when he's doing dumb stuff.
Yeah, like that friend who always gets into trouble, but you love him anyway, because deep down they're good. And that whole journey, trying to be better, even if it's messy, I think we all get that.
We all have those moments, right?
Yes.
The flaws, the bad choices. It's just that with Charles, it all happens, well, on a pretty public stage and with danger involved.
And don't forget the humor. Even with a murder, Brett manages to make you laugh. Those little observations, the timing. It's like, how does he do that? It's a tough thing to pull off.
I'm curious, though, about the drinking. Charles and his problem. Does that play into why he's drawn to these mysteries? Is it an escape, or does it actually help him see things others miss?
That's a really good question. And I think it gets to the core of, like, who Charles is. The reviewers, they didn't really get into that too much, but it's definitely something to think about. Does the drinking make things worse, or does it, like, sharpen his senses in a way? It's a fine line, and Brett, he doesn't make it easy.
And what about the time period? We've talked about the tapes, the theater, but what about the early 90s as a whole? Do the reviewers mention if that's, like, important to the story?
They mentioned it a little, like, the book really captures that specific time, not just the technology, but, like, how people felt, what they thought about stuff. There's this feeling of, I don't know, change in the air, like the old ways are fading and something new is coming. Kind of like Charles, right? He's trying to figure himself out, reinvent himself.
That's a good point. It's like he's not just solving this murder, he's also dealing with a world that's changing all around him, trying to find where he fits in. And that theme, that feeling of change, of not being sure what's next, that probably resonates with people even now.
Oh, definitely. And that shows how good Brett is as a writer, right? His stories, They're timeless, but they also fit perfectly into the time they're set in. People can relate to them no matter when they read them.
So we've got this complicated, kind of messed up main character, a murder mystery in this world of actors and theaters, and a changing world outside of all that, plus an author who can make you laugh and keep you on the edge of your seat. What more could you want in a book?
Exactly. And let's not forget all those little details, the cassette tapes, the actors struggling to make it, all the behind-the-scenes stuff. That's what makes it feel real, not just some generic mystery.
You know what else I'm interested in? The whole truth versus illusion thing. We've got this play within a play, a murder at a fake performance. And Charles always trying to figure out what's real, what's just an act. It makes you think maybe Brett is saying, like, life itself is a performance.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. And it fits with Charles's own struggles, right? With who he is, with maybe fooling himself. Is he really trying to solve this murder? Or is he just playing detective? Trying to feel important, in this world where he feels kind of lost.
Whoa, those are some deep questions, and ones we should definitely talk about more as we dig deeper into Dead Room Farce.
Sure, sure. I'm also really curious about Charles and Francis. The reviewers mention them like it's this ongoing thing in the series, will they, won't they? Adds another layer to Charles.
Makes you wonder if all these murders he solves, is it somehow tied to him wanting her back? Like he's proving something, showing her he can be the hero, the one who protects her.
Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe these cases are like a way to avoid dealing with her. With all the messy emotions, the commitment, it's easier to focus on clues than on love, right?
Either way, it makes the story even more interesting. I can't wait to see how it all plays out. But before we get too far ahead, let's get back to the murder itself. We know Mark Lear had secrets, and someone wanted them to stay hidden. But who are the suspects? Did the reviewers give us any hints about who might have wanted to, get rid of him?
Oh, yeah. It seems like almost everyone Charles knows could be involved. There's that one actor, super unhappy with how well Mark was doing, a jealous lover, thought Mark was cheating, and even like a stagehand, super mysterious, knew way too much about everyone's business.
So it's like the classic whodunit setup, right? We've got all these characters, each with their own secrets, their reasons for wanting Mark gone. And Charles, our flawed but lovable detective, trying to put it all together, all while battling his own issues in this crazy theater world.
It's the perfect recipe for a good read, for sure. I bet you'll be guessing till the very end.
Speaking of the end, do the reviewers spoil it? Or are they nice enough to let us find out ourselves?
They don't ruin it, thankfully. But they do say there are some twists, things you don't see coming. So it's not as easy as it might seem at first.
Oh, I love a good twist. That's what makes these mysteries so fun, right? You think you've got it all figured out,
Yeah.
and then bam, Brett throws something new at you, and you're back to square one.
That's how you know he's good at what he does. He keeps you guessing till the very last page. And in Dead Room Farce, it sounds like he's really outdone himself. It's got everything, the mystery, the humor, the suspense.
I'm ready to see how it all unfolds. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. We've talked about the satire, the funny parts, the murder itself. But what about the writing style, like how Brett tells the story? Do the reviewers say anything about his writing, how he creates characters and, makes the setting come alive?
Oh, yeah. They're all about his wit, how he writes dialogue that's like snappy and fun. And he's so good at observing people. Like he really gets human nature. He makes these characters that feel real, but also really entertaining, flawed, but you still like them.
It's like he captures what it means to be human, with all the messy stuff, the good and the bad. And he does it in this way that's light, funny, but never forced.
Exactly. You want to keep reading to see what happens next, but you also want to savor each sentence, each little observation. It's that good.
And that's what makes a great writer, right? Someone who can take you to another world, make you care about the characters, and make you think about things in a whole new way.
Absolutely. And with Dead Room Farce, Simon Brett does all that and more. He creates this world that's both familiar and a little strange. Characters you like, even though they're not perfect. A world where you can laugh and be scared at the same time. And where you're never quite sure what's real and what's not.
I definitely want to explore this world more, and I bet our listener does too. So, to our listener, I say this. If you're looking for a mystery that's smart, fun, and will take you to this crazy world of actors and cassette tapes, then Dead Room Farce is for you.
Grab a copy, get comfy, maybe with a cup of tea or something stronger, and get ready to enter the world of Charles Paris, the accidental detective who always seems to find trouble, but also always seems to solve the case.
But be careful. Once you step into Charles's world, you might not want to leave. He's got this charm, this way of finding humor in the darkest places. It'll stick with you.
And who knows, maybe after this one, you'll be hooked, ready to dive into the next Charles Paris mystery. There are tons of them out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And maybe, just maybe, as you go on these adventures with Charles, you'll learn something about yourself along the way.
Because the best stories, right, they're the ones that stay with you, the ones that make you think and feel, and leave you wondering.
Speaking of wondering, there's this one question that keeps popping into my head throughout this whole deep dive.
Oh, what's that?
Well, Charles and his, talent for stumbling into murders, it makes me think, was it really just chance that he ended up in this particular play? Or is there something more connecting the play itself to the murder?
Now that is a question worth thinking about, and I think that's part of why Dead Room Farce is so good. It's a mystery on so many levels, like what's real, what's fake, the play, the characters' lives, it all gets mixed up.
It makes you wonder if Charles is really in control, or if he's just like a piece being moved around by someone else, someone he doesn't even know.
That's kind of creepy, right? And it makes the whole story even more suspenseful. We're not just trying to figure out who did it, but also how much is Charles actually in charge of his own life.
It's like he's caught in a web, and every time he tries to get free to solve the mystery, he just gets more tangled up.
And that's why he's such a great character. He's not your typical hero. He's not always calling the shots, but he wants justice. He needs to make sense of the chaos around him.
And in Dead Room Farce, all that chaos is even crazier because of where it happens. The theater, where everything is about pretending, where you can't always tell what's real and what's not. The secret's everywhere.
And Simon Brett, he gets that. He writes it perfectly. It's funny, it makes you think, and it'll keep you guessing.
It makes you wonder, even after you finish the book, are the answers Charles finds really the truth? Or just another part of the illusion? It makes you think, about how we all put on a show sometimes, the roles we play, the things we hide. Maybe that's why Charles loves these mysteries so much. He's trying to find something real in a world that's full of fake.
Yeah, that's a good point. By solving these real murders, he's grounding himself, finding something solid outside of all that, stage stuff.
Maybe it's about connection,
Yeah.
or purpose. Something that lasts longer than, one acting job.
And maybe along the way, he learns about himself too. Every case, every puzzle, all that darkness, it makes him face, his own stuff, his flaws, his weaknesses.
It's like he's peeling back the layers, right? Not just of the mystery, but of himself too.
That's what makes him so interesting, right? He's not perfect. He messes up, but he keeps trying, keeps searching.
And that's something we can all relate to, I think. We all have those things, our own demons, our own mysteries to solve.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And maybe that's why we like characters like Charles. We see ourselves in them, the struggles, the good times, the bad times. We root for them because we see that, that little bit of ourselves in them, that need to figure things out, to find our place.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dead Room Farce,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you'd want our listener to take away?
I hope they're, hooked. I hope they want to read the book, get lost in this world. But also I hope they see it as more than just a whodunit. It's about us, our flaws, what we want, our search for, what's it all about?
Well said. It sounds like Dead Room Farce is more than just a good mystery. It's about theater, the pull of the unknown, and what it means to be human.
And the humor. Don't forget that. Simon Brett, he's so witty, so good at satire. I bet readers will be laughing out loud, even while they're trying to, crack the case with Charles.
It's a pretty cool mix, right? The humor, the suspense, all the deeper stuff. I'm really curious to see how it all comes together.
Me too. And who knows, maybe after reading this one, you'll be back for more. Ready for another deep dive into the next Charles Paris mystery? There's a whole bunch out there.
And maybe, as you follow Charles on those adventures, you'll discover a little something about yourself along the way.
Because that's what good stories do, right? They stick with you, make you think, make you feel, and leave you wanting more.
So, to our listeners, if you want a mystery that's smart, funny, and will make you think, then check out Dead Room Farce. You won't be disappointed.
Happy reading!